Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a specially called meeting of the City Council for Tuesday, September the 9th. Ms. Hilbert, will you please call roll?
Yes, sir. Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilman Kidder?
Here.
Councilwoman Butler?
Present.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Young? Here. Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
And Mayor Crocker.
Here. If you would, please stand, join me for the pledges, followed by a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, welcome, everyone. Again, it's a specially called meeting, and we will jump into our agenda. Start with the item B1, announcements and reminders. Mr. Garza, do you have anything for us this evening?
I do not.
All right, great answer. B2, public and employee recognitions. Anything?
I do not.
Okay. Do we have any items from council?
You do not? No, I'm just.
Okay, yeah, got it. All right, citizens communication. I have one green card, and that is from Mr. James Collins. Welcome. Good to see you. Sir, how are you? Doing well, thanks.
James Collins, President, VPOA. Good afternoon. Thank you to all who have made the vote tonight for a city budget that includes a pay plan that helps put the city of Victoria on better footing to recruit and retain police officers possible. Specifically, I'd like to thank the mayor who promised to make compensation a priority. I'd also like to thank Councilman Ricky De La Garza and Councilwoman April Butler. Your support for the men and women who serve Victoria in the capacity of police officer has been unwavering. Thank you to Councilman Lofgren for serving on the Compensation Committee along with Councilman De La Garza and Councilwoman April Butler. And thank you also to Councilman Young, Councilwoman Scott, and Councilman Kidder for the work that you've done. Thank you, City Manager Garza and Assistant City Manager Reyna for prioritizing pay and compensation. Your efforts have not gone unrecognized. I appreciate you taking time to have conversations with us as this plan developed. And thank you to Chief Young for continuing to push for us in meetings and with all of you and with the community. Please make this vote one that recognizes the vital role your police officers play in serving the citizens of Victoria. Please help us bring in qualified and eager cadets for our academy and well-trained and effective licensed personnel. And as we move forward, let's keep this momentum. May God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. All right, that is the only card I have, so we will move on to section C, and we'll begin with item C1.
Item C1 is a budget public hearing.
Do we have presentations on the two hearings?
No, sir. We'll wait until the action items to.
Okay, very good. Then I will open the public hearing on item C1, which is on the proposed budget. If there's anyone who wishes to address council on this item, please come forward at this time. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and we'll move on to item C2.
Item C2 is a public hearing on the 2025-2026 City of Victoria tax rate.
I will open the public hearing on item C2. If there's anyone who wishes to address council on this matter, please come forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing on item C2. And we will jump to the consent agenda, which is item D1.
Yes, sir. Item D1 is the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting held on September 2nd, 2025.
It's a short consent agenda tonight, so do I have a motion on this item?
So move. Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And D1 passes. All right, we're going to jump down real quick before we get to the action items. We're going to go into our work session. And so we will begin with item G1, which is a water system review subcommittee update. Mr. Garza, I think you have some information for us this evening.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to provide an update. This update is specifically focused on the solution and the next steps that have been in the works since the boil water notices that we experienced. And so I'm literally going to jump right into it. Last month, we provided an update where the solutions focused around people, process, equipment, technology, and things of that sort. And so I want to share with you an update on where we are in each of those items. I'll begin by, it's not working, James. Okay, thank you. I'm going to begin each of these sections by showing you the same slide that I shared last month as a starting point. And so last month, under this category, we talked about the need to improve the daily oversight and management of the plant. We talked a little bit of the challenges that we're facing due to being short-staffed, and of course, the key vacancy that we have in surface water treatment plant manager. The permanent long-term solution that we are embarking on related to the daily oversight is really just changing where we place the responsibility of the surface water treatment plant. And so on the left, I know it's hard to see, but on the left, it shows what previously our organizational chart looked like. And in essence, it shows that we have 2 operations and maintenance managers that report to the public works director, and the surface water treatment plant manager reports to one of those operation and maintenance managers, which is a utility-centric manager. This creates a extra step, if you will, between the surface water treatment plant and public works leadership. And so the change that we think will make a big difference is taking advantage of a recent reorg that had nothing to do with the boil water notices. You may recall that we reorged to create an assistant director position with public works. But in essence have now the surface water treatment plant manager report directly to the assistant director, in addition to having that utility-centric operations manager report directly to public works leadership. We think this really improves the lines of oversight and communication between management at the plant and public works leadership by basically eliminating a level. This also creates an opportunity for public works leadership to improve upon the collaboration that is required between the surface water treatment plant and the utilities division. You may recall during the overview last month, we expressed how the utilities division is critical to backfill when we're short-staffed in the surface water treatment plant, and we identified that collaboration needs improvement. And so by placing both of those more directly reporting to public works leadership, we know will make a big difference. And of course, this is all possible because of the people. And so of course, we know that Greg, who was our operations maintenance manager and is now our assistant director, is critical to this. We're also in the process of doing an internal promotion to that vacant operations manager position, and both of those which we feel extremely confident and have a high level of trust in those individuals to ensure that there's adequate collaboration and adequate oversight of the surface water treatment plant. As it relates to the vacancies, we talked last month a little bit about the importance of cross-training, and I'll get to that here in a later slide when I provide an overview on where we are with training. We discussed last month the need to try and find or think creatively about how we supplement staff due to the vacancies at the surface water treatment plant. What we've realized since last month is that rather than focusing on trying to create some kind of auxiliary bench of individuals to help whenever we're short-staffed in the surface water treatment plant, we realized that because of the importance of the work that surface water treatment plant operators do, meaning they're sampling, that necessitates a lot of understanding of how to do it and keeping up with the best practices on how to do it. And so rather than backfilling through some kind of external mechanism the vacancies at the surface water treatment plant, we want to instead focus on using the utilities division, whom are our employees, so we can hold them accountable, we can properly train them, et cetera, use them to backfill the surface water treatment plant vacancies, and then focus on external assistance on the things that they do. The utilities division focuses on addressing leaks, water leaks, breaks, as well as supplementing surface water treatment plant. We rather have the folks that are taking samples be our folks, our individuals, people that we more directly can trust. We can outsource the water leaks, the water breaks. And you may recall several months ago, there was a contract that came before you that Greg presented on where we actually did that. And so expect to see more of that. One of the things that, of course, continues to be a challenge for us is just the vacancies. And we all know just from ongoing conversations that Public Works is a department that has quite a bit of vacancies. And so you'll notice here just all of the different divisions of Public Works, but specifically the surface water treatment plant still technically has 5 vacancies. And so those, of course, include the manager, which we have already gone through interview processes for and have made an offer to an individual. And so we're still waiting on fine tuning that. But we do have some other vacancies at the surface water treatment plant in an operator, maintenance tech, as well as some technicians. You'll notice as well on the table that we show 10 vacancies under utilities, water, and wastewater personnel. That's the utilities division that backfills for the surface water treatment plant. This table does not account for the 5 frozen positions that we froze a couple of years ago. And so in reality, once you add the 5, it's really 15 vacancies that we're away from being fully staffed in that division. And so we know that one of the biggest driving factors of these vacancies is compensation. And so one of the reasons why I'm presenting this before the budget presentation is because I want to, as part of this presentation, provide an overview on the more aggressive and intentional recommendation on improving pay for the utility-centric positions. The intent behind my recommendation for this was, as I just described, just being more intentional with funding as best we can some of the utility-centric positions that we know we just have issues filling. We're wanting to be intentional with addressing the vacancy issue regardless of what the market data suggests, and I'll get more into that here in a second. We also wanted to be more intentional with prioritizing our long-tenured employees, because one of the things that we've identified contributes to the issues that we face at the surface water treatment plant is that in the absence of having standard operating procedures, you're really dependent on experience. And you may recall last month me mentioning that on average, currently the surface water treatment operators have only been with us for an average of 3 or 4 years. And so we need to be very intentional with trying to retain our experienced folks because they're critical to ensuring that that knowledge is passed down and critical to the exercise that we're currently under, which is creating those formalized standard operating procedures. And all in all, that recommendation of that pay program is $207,000. I want to draw your attention to the table on the right, and I'll walk you through that a little bit. So what you see on the left is just an example of some of the positions. We have roughly 90 positions that are utility-centric funded positions. What you see are some of the positions where we're seeing the vacancies. And that, of course, includes the maintenance worker position, the equipment operators, crew leaders, and the surface water treatment plant operators, et cetera. What you see in the column for original is already included in the budget and was already part of the recommendation that came from the compensation committee. And so we already were suggesting a 7% increase to the utility maintenance worker position. We were already recommending a pay bump of anywhere from 3 to 8% for equipment operator, and so on and so forth. You'll notice that for the operator positions, both at the surface water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment facilities, that recommendation was slim to none. Some of that driven by the market data. And so I know when we met with the compensation committee yesterday, they had some questions about the market data. And we certainly have market data that suggests that what we're currently paying for those positions falls within the range of what the market data suggests. However, we still have vacancies, right? And so clearly being at market, in the market range of those positions isn't enough to attract and retain for those positions. And so that's just something to be mindful of. On the right-hand side, under the updated column, you show what the new total percentage increases are for those positions. And so in a nutshell, utility maintenance worker, we're recommending being more aggressive. And so currently that position starts off at $33,000 per year. We're now recommending being more aggressive and changing that to $38,000 per year, which is a 15% pay bump, and so on and so forth. And if you're wondering, why are there ranges? Well, the ranges, it just depends on the individual. Some individuals that have been with us longer over the course of the years have already received, adjustments. And so adjusting them isn't as costly as adjusting somebody that hasn't been with us as long and necessitates a longer gap to catch them up to what we're recommending. One of the things that came up in our conversation with the compensation committee yesterday was it's easy to track and follow, being more aggressive with some of those lower positions that we know we have some concerns with, but it's a little bit much harder to kind of track and easily define the adjustments that happen to crew leaders and supervisors and above. And so I wanted to very specifically point out the plant maintenance supervisor positions as an example. So the current recommendation has a 0% pay bump for those individuals. And the more aggressive recommendation has that ranging from 3 to 12%. And there's one individual in specific, and I normally don't like talking about individual employees, but I think Lorenzo deserves it. Lorenzo's been with our plant for literally over 50 years. He looks like he's 35, but he's been with us for over 50 years. Makes a great salsa. He's a great guy. But losing somebody that's been with us for 50 years would be detrimental to that operation. He plays a critical role in ensuring that folks at the regional wastewater treatment plant are up to speed with what they need to do. His experience is deceiving when we look at it, because some of you may recall that the city took over the regional treatment facility from GBRA. And so when you look at his tenure with us, it's deceiving because it'll only show that he's been with us for 20 to 25 years, but he was with the GBRA plant for 20 to 25 years before we took it over. And so in his instance, right, he could retire tomorrow, right? And so we want to be intentional with ensuring that we keep somebody like Lorenzo, right? And so proposing a good pay bump for him would achieve us keeping him around. And so that's one example of a specific individual who's just of high value to us, that in order to keep or prevent from retiring, we need to be aggressive with that and be intentional with that. And so some of the recommended positions that are supervisor and above or crew leader and above that we're trying to be more aggressive with were intended from a retention standpoint. And so I'll move on from that aspect of it. But happy to answer any questions at any point, by the way. Any questions on that? Okay. If you're wondering, I forgot to make this point. If you're wondering, okay, where is that $207,000 coming from? We had a brief conversation, before the meeting, that keep in mind that this is utilities division. And our utilities division is funded by our ratepayers, not our taxpayers, and those are two completely different things. Later, when I go through the presentation, giving you an overview of the proposed budget, I have a very specific slide that I want to reference to very specifically show you where that $207,000 is coming from. But basically, it's coming from working capital in the utility fund. And again, I'll show you more specifically where that's identified in my budget presentation. Moving on to the people and process section, this is a slide that we included last month, and where we talked about our partnership with Texas Utilities and Environmental, as well as the Texas Optimization Program through TCEQ. With Texas Utilities and Environmental, Mike's been doing a great job in just assisting with the oversight of the surface water treatment plant in the absence of having a manager. He's also done a great job in conducting evaluations and recommendations around our operations, standard operating procedures, as well as our employees. Every employee is different in how they approach the job and their level of training. And so he's been very specific with his recommendations on what each individual employee needs in order to get to the level that we need them to be. So that's been very helpful for staff. He's helped provide some training on how to capture chlorine residuals for field testing. He's provided some training on proper calibration. That obviously is all very important. The absence of having standard operating procedures, we've realized creates opportunities for things just being done differently amongst operators or among shifts. And of course, it's important that we be consistent across the board, and he's helping us do that. The partnership with Texas Optimization Program has already kicked off, and so there's actually already been a couple of trainings that have been completed. The team from TCQ, they're based out of Houston. They've already come into town and provided 2 trainings. Those are the ones on the left, and those have focused on just ensuring that they provide some guidance on how we analyze data, triggers of like the NAP, for example, or Nitrification Action Plan, around flushing, process control, chloramines, monitoring and reporting, things that might sound basic, but things that are important to reemphasize. The thing that's been great about this opportunity with Texas Optimization Program is that we've had not only the employees of the surface water treatment plant participate, but also the employees of the utilities division. And so again, right, we want to make sure that the people who back up our surface water treatment plant are our own employees from the utilities division, because we want to make sure that everything is consistent. And we do that by ensuring that those utility division employees are exposed to all the same trainings. And so that's been a really neat thing that has come from this opportunity with the Texas Optimization Program. They're planning on coming back next week, as well as in next month, to just do some additional training. And so that's already scheduled and in the books. Once we get to the October 4th training, you'll notice that in parentheses, very intentionally put all utility divisions, because for that training, we actually want to also start incorporating employees from our wastewater treatment plants. Because it's important that we learn from what happened at the surface water treatment plant and apply ensuring that we have, adequate reporting, adequate standard operating procedures, not only at the surface water treatment plant, but at the wastewater treatment plants as well. And so they're going to begin to participate in some of these trainings as well. On the topic of process, equipment, and technology, we shared last month some ideas on how to just improve in these categories. And so we talked a little bit about automated flushers. I have an update for you on that. We talked a little bit of the need for modernization of software that we use because of just the manual process that has existed on how we track sampling data. You may recall us mentioning that we observed and realized that data is tracked in a notebook. And unless you're flipping through the notebook, it could be very difficult to track trends. And so we want to use software to our advantage in order to do that. And we talked briefly, of course, about how SCADA can also help achieve some of these elements. And so I first want to provide an update on the auto flushers, and I'll show you a map here in a second. But we did order and receive an additional 12 auto flushers that were installed shortly after they were received on August 25th. They're already out in the system. That's the map on the left. And so you'll notice that the blue are existing auto flushers that we have, and the red, orange color are the new ones. You'll notice that there's a theme that they're being placed at the extremities of the system for the most part, because we know that those are the areas of the lowest consumption. And so we just want to be more intentional with that. In addition to installing them, there's been a SOP that's been developed to ensure that they are inspected on a frequent basis to ensure that we catch, any particular issue that might take place. Our IT SCADA guy is currently also working a solution that could help bridge a gap in how the information gets communicated. And so they're working on a sort of makeshift solution that could potentially add a monitor to those automated flushers that could send data to SCADA, so that it's not something that has to manually be checked, and could be something that can not manually, but could be done remotely. One of the things that also has been realized over the course of the last month and a half is with the increased frequency of sampling. So you may recall us mentioning that we've gone away from weekly testing of chlorine residuals at water towers to daily. That's actually been changed to actually twice per day. And so staff has begun being even more aggressive with how often they sample. With that, there's been a realization that just takes up a lot of staff time. And so one of the opportunities that staff is in the process of looking into is adding some chlorine analyzers at our water towers, as well as water plant 3, which would basically help facilitate that sampling without it needing to be an individual going out to each of those sites. And so the map on the right shows you the location of our water towers, as well as water plant 3, to give you a sense of where those chlorine analyzers are looking to be installed. Those have not been ordered. That's something that we're still working on. In the meantime, though, staff is keeping up with that more aggressive sampling schedule. But obviously having the analyzers will help significantly. On the software modernization front, I have good news as it relates to the SCADA. Last month, we shared how the SCADA has been one of the projects that has been held up through the CDBG MIT process by just the GLO, who's overseeing that. We've been waiting for over 2.5 years just to get our projects qualified. And ironically, we received that notice of eligibility on August 20th. And so we are now in the process of simply just waiting for a contract and finalizing a contract with the GLO for those projects, which not only included the SCADA, but also included Lone Tree Acres, drainage, and street improvements. Councilmember Kidder, I know I owe you an email response to that. But that's good news. It also included the screening project, by the way, at the regional wastewater treatment plant. And so that's good news because it basically puts us in a position to not have to, I guess, pursue that alternative option that I had presented, which would have shifted some projects around in order to prioritize SCADA. So we're hopeful. And again, that's something that we've waited for 2.5 years. Another software that is currently in the development phase is an eSense software. We didn't have a name for it a month ago, but now we do because we've identified the actual company that's helping us develop the software. But basically, this is the software that we would input data in from the sampling in order to help keep better track of it. To be clear, this wouldn't replace the physical logging on a notebook. That is still very critical to the operation, but it's an additional element that could help track some of that data. That software would allow Public Works leadership to basically establish parameters to where that system could automatically actually create a work order to send to staff if something was out of sync. And so that'd be a very good enhancement on the software front. So again, have better oversight and not just rely on the human element. That's in the works. We don't have an estimated timeline of completion on that. In the meantime, staff continues to lean on utilizing shared files, and so that Public Works leadership can access the results of the sampling data without having to physically go to the plant and flip through a book. And of course, next steps, very similar to the next steps that we shared last month, because we do want to continue to prioritize people, process improvements. Now we're focused more on the implementation side of it. And so we're focused on implementing some of the recommendations that have come forward from Texas Environmental and others, as well as, of course, the recommendations on the software that we've already decided on and are working on development. And I know that one of the biggest missing pieces is, of course, the creation of a final report. That's something that we'll have to partner with our communications department on, because they, of course, have the expertise, to help put a nice document together. And so I think we are finally at that point where we will begin engaging with them to help put that together for us. And happy to answer any questions that you all might have, or if any members of the subcommittee want to add anything, please feel free.
No, I'll just say that thank you for that update, Mr. Garza. And I'll just say that this has been a comprehensive overview, and in doing that, as Mr. Garza mentioned, we also talked about what other departments can we look at upgrading through this process, as you mentioned. Make sure SOPs at the wastewater treatment, that we're looking at that as well. And so I really think coming out of this, in my opinion, I think the committee's done a very thorough job of identifying what the issues were, not only with the issues that led to the boil water notices, but also the issues that and challenges that we have in terms of improvements. And I think the solutions that have been identified and that's been brought to us both by staff, by third parties, I think has been outstanding in terms of addressing those issues. So I think we're definitely heading in the right direction and on track, and hopefully we can get all this implemented and move forward. So I thank Dr. Young and Ms. Scott for their work on it, and Mr. Garza and the staff for all the work that's been done on that. We're not finished yet, but we can at least see the finish line, I think, from here. Any other questions?
How do I follow that with just regular questions?
Can you move the microphone?
It's always me. The additional flushers, the active water mixers, the software, are those encumbered for the 2025 budget, or is there consideration for those things in the 26 budget so that we know?
So far, they've been
anticipate.
encumbered, in fiscal year '25.
Okay. I just wanted to know if we were going to be looking at that for 26 as an additional budget amendment.
Yeah,
for
not
any
at
of
this
those.
time. At this time, there's nothing specific that we're aware of. You mentioned the automated mixers. That's something that staff is going to look into as well. That might be an element that maybe would need to come forward later as form of the budget amendment. But also keep in mind that every year, the utility operation has money already set aside for maintenance issues or that just arise throughout the year. And so, for example, how we were able to pay or acquire, I should say, these flushers was simply just tapping into a budget line item that they already have, that they tap into throughout the year when issues arise. And so with the beginning of a new fiscal year, it's a fresh pot of money, if you will, in that line item that they could potentially access. Now, if the cost of something, is just too extravagant that we think might not be prudent to tap into that money because let's say something comes up in October or November, we don't want to take up all that money having the rest of the fiscal year still remaining, then that's a conversation that we can have at that time. But at this time, there isn't anything specific that we know of.
And then I know you mentioned a final report and needing to pull that together with communications. Is there an estimated timeline on that or
No.
when it could be expected?
No, right now, our focus, of course, is finalizing the budget. Communications department's focus is on trying to develop a flyer and just focus on rolling that out. But I suspect that it could be something that could take a month or two.
And I would add that I think as part of that report, we at least want a little bit more clarity kind of on the implementation of the SCADA and what that may look like. We don't necessarily have to get into the nitty-gritty as part of that because that will be ongoing. But I think we need a little bit clearer picture of that to plug in there. So that'll be part of that process as well.
Yeah, and I suspect that there'll be elements in that written report that also hit on some other things like our actual infrastructure and just things that we know we need to continue to look at, but weren't necessarily the driving factors of what happened, if that makes any sense. Clearly the driving factors were the people, the process, that element, and that's why that's been our focus of these updates. But there has been conversations on some other overarching kind of challenges that we have in our system. So as an example, our water tower number 3 is our oldest water tower. And that water tower is the source of many of our residual challenges, which can be mitigated by simply staying on top of it. But if we know that water tower is a source of a challenge for us, then it probably behooves us to explore a long-term solution that addresses that, right? But that leads into a more holistic CIP-centric, conversation that's a little bit broader than the low-hanging fruit elements that can help improve the operation. Just to give you an example.
All right, very good. Any other questions?
I'd just like to thank the committee, and I think it's impressive that the aggressiveness that y'all have taken on this, and I'm sure the citizens of Victoria appreciate it, and I know my constituents have stated that they appreciate it. So thank y'all 3, and thank you, Jesus, for getting on this.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right.
Okay.
Nothing further? All right. Well, we will jump back then into our action items. So we will go up to item E1.
Yes, sir. Item E1 is an ordinance approving and adopting a budget for fiscal year beginning on October 1st, 2025 in the total amount of $255,286,194. This item is on second and third reading.
All right, so I'll keep it going. You'll get to hear a lot from me this evening, I suppose. I thought it would be appropriate to provide a holistic overview of the budget. We normally don't, at this particular vote, go through it in as great level of detail as I kind of want to. But there's been changes. There was changes from the proposed tax rate to what the final tax rate is. We've made some other changes. And so I thought it'd be appropriate to just walk you through a high-level overview of the entire budget in anticipation of the vote on both of those things tonight. The overall budget, as a refresher, is $255 million. It did change slightly by a little over $1 million, and so I'll walk you through that briefly. Back on August 5th, we proposed an expenditure budget of 253, close to 254 million. And as I mentioned, that's gone up by a little over $1 million. And so you can see the breakdown here. As we discussed last week, we incorporated the bond redemption program. We changed the tax rate, which impacted, of course, the revenue and also impacted a little bit of the expenditure side. And so, again, this is just to walk you through the difference from August 5th to what you voted on last week. What's before you tonight, as we've alluded to, adds an additional $207,000 on the expenditure side to account for that more aggressive pay recommendation that I've given, for a new total expenditure budget of $255.2 million. And again, I'll show you in a slide here in a bit where that $207,000 is coming from. One of the things that I know always sticks out, and rightfully so, is why is there a difference between the revenue budget and the expenditure budget? And so I just want to provide a brief recap of that. We know that that delta stems from basically utilizing some excess cash that we have. And we always prioritize, and we need to utilize this cash for one-time expenditures. And so that's what we've done here. This is just an overview of where that $12.5 million is coming from. As you know, every year we always have savings, for lack of a better word, because we don't always expend all the money that we think we're going to expend. And so that provides an opportunity to have excess fund balance leading into any fiscal year to be able to do one-time expenditures. And so this is reflective of that. The proposed budget of $255 million is an increase of roughly $61 million compared to the fiscal year 25 budget. That is mainly driven by the CIP, by, of course, the historic pay program that I'll walk you through here in a bit, as well as a historic investment in vehicles. And if we could just holistically summarize, what the budget story is all about for fiscal year 26, it would be those categories. And so those are the ones that I want to focus on. One of those elements is a $79 million CIP program. I'm not going to necessarily walk you through all of these changes that are reflected on this slide, but we did distribute a summary of what that $79.25 million is inclusive of. And as we summarize up above, it's inclusive of $17 million for residential streets. It's inclusive of $9 million for drainage, $8 million for thoroughfare streets, and so on and so forth. Of course, one of the biggest driving factors is the community center project. And to that end, we do plan on providing an update for you on that project at an upcoming council meeting. We are in the design phase of that project, and so we're excited on how that's shaping out. And so we're excited to show you the latest and greatest in the next month or two as it relates to that project. But nonetheless, you have in front of you the details on everything that's included in that program. But as mentioned, one of the driving factors on the difference between fiscal year 26 and 25 is the value of that CIP. This kind of basically showcases some of that. And so you'll see how in fiscal year 25, that budgeted CIP was 40 million. And so you see that difference compared to fiscal year 26. I personally love this slide because it just highlights how more aggressive we've been over the last 5 years as it relates to streets. And we know that that's a big priority for you and for the public. And so it's just very exciting for us to see the increased investment in streets as well as the increased investment in facilities for our employees, such as the Public Safety Headquarters building, which is captured in fiscal year 24. The pay program is also a big part of the story for fiscal year 26. This figure here of $5.5 million has been adjusted by that $207,000. And so back in August, that 5.5 was 5.3-ish. And so we've updated all of these slides to reflect that additional $207,000. You see up above, on the top part, I should say, of the table, how the pay program itself is roughly 3.8. The public safety element of it is roughly 70%. And then we go on into hitting on some of the new positions that we proposed. I know that on the new positions part, know that with the new positions, we're going to wait to fill some of those until after the holidays as a way to help offset the delta that we experienced by not adopting a tax rate that was the voter approval tax rate. And we've also adjusted some sales tax, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. We did, of course, also add a PTO buyback program, and so that's captured in this $5.5 million cost as well. This is just a different way to showcase how the bulk of that is in the general fund, which isn't a surprise, considering that's where our public safety departments are included. We've also mentioned that we're doing a historic investment in fleet, and so this highlights that. Over $6 million for public safety related acquisitions, and so that includes 9 police vehicles, 4 ambulances, 3 pumpers, brush truck, 1 bucket truck for public works, and 3 automated trucks for our solid waste department or environmental services department. On the revenue side, I thought it'd be appropriate to update all of the usual slides with the updated tax rate. And so this is an updated table that reflects the latest tax rate. I'm sorry, wrong slide. This is a refresher on our values, which is, you may recall, decreased overall by 1.2%. And we saw that we saw some increase on commercial, but saw a decrease in residential of 4.3%. And you may recall that the reality of having a negative NTAV put us in a position to have to consider an increase to the tax rate simply just to generate the same amount of money that we brought in last year. And so this is the one that I was referring to, which updates it with the tax rate of 0.4790. And this also includes the $600,000 bond redemption program. In addition, this also captures an unused increment. And so we know that we've been hearing about the state legislature decreasing the cap from 3.5% to something else. If it stays at 3.5%, because we're not going down the path of voter approval tax rate, it's leaving an increment that in theory would be accessible next year. And so this is reflective of that as well. We've also updated this slide that was changed to reflect the aggregate decrease in residential of 4.3% to show what that impact would be, even with the increase in the tax rate. And so we know that an individual's impact on taxes obviously depends on their valuations. We don't have any direct control over that. And so we always put the slide together based off of what that holistic change is. And again, you see at the top how overall residential values went down 4.3%. And so that's why this slide it utilizes that trend. And so you see how an individual would pay less in property taxes if they experience that negative 4.3% decrease in valuation. I left this slide in to kind of just show what other entities are doing, just to focus on the fact that one of the biggest driving factors was the lack of new improvements. I'm not necessarily gonna talk too much about it because we've talked a lot about it, but I think it's just important to note that that was one of the biggest differences between our appraised values and that of other entities in the county. This slide simply just reflects the updated tax rate all the way to the right. But I also think it's a good opportunity to remind you that the last time City Council was put in a position to increase the tax rate also came at a time when we had a negative NTAV and a low figure in new improvements. And so this sort of just further, I hope, illustrates the correlation between tax rate, valuations, and specifically with new improvements as well. On the sales tax side, we've adjusted the sales tax projection. And so you'll see at the bottom right that we've adjusted our sales tax projection to 581,000. This was 500,000. And so we've adjusted it to not be as conservative with this as a way to fill the gap with the loss of property tax revenue by not approving the voter approval tax rate. And so one way to think of how we close the gap was through a combination of increasing our revenue projections, which we did both with sales tax and ambulance billing, and reducing expenditures, which I showed early on, total about $141,000, which are going to manifest themselves in the way of waiting until after the holidays to fill some of the new positions. This is just an overview of our general fund. Not going to spend too much time on this other than just to illustrate that the bulk of the increase in our general fund is due to the proposed pay program, since roughly 70% of that is going to public safety personnel, which again, are in our general fund. I always think it's important to highlight this slide because it really helps explain why we're not in the position that a lot of cities are in. And it also helps explain how our conservative approach, not only does it help shield us from having to make reductions in service like other communities are currently having to do, but it also intentionally sets us up to have that excess cash that I talked about earlier to utilize for one-time expenditures. All of that is interconnected, because you could say, that's great that we have a cushion here, but it's too big of a cushion. Let's just use that cash for something. Okay, but then that's not gonna help the cause in creating excess cash the following year, right? So everything is connected. So this basically shows on the right-hand side, on the right-hand most column or bar, that our minimum reserve is $16.7 million and that we're estimating ending fiscal year 26 at $20 million. So basically over $3 million in wiggle room should anything arise throughout the fiscal year. But again, leaving that wiggle room is us intentionally basically ensuring that we have some excess cash going into fiscal year 27 for one-time expenditures that we will need to make in that year. On the utility fund, this has also been adjusted to reflect that $207,000. And so the original budget recommendation on the expenditure side of this showed 42.2-ish, and that's been adjusted to reflect 42.4 because of that addition of the $207,000. And where that money is coming from is from that excess cash. And so this particular slide back on August 5th showed an estimated ending working capital balance of over $10 million that now shows 9.8. So we took money from our working capital to help fund that $207,000. And if you're wondering, well, that's concerning, because that's not recurring revenue, you would be correct. We need to make sure that we account for those increases as part of the utility rate study that we already are in the works for. And we basically utilize some of this excess working capital to help bridge the gap between now and whenever that utility rate study takes place.
I just want to clarify, if you look at our operating revenue and operating expense, you can see there's still an excess of recurring revenue of $2.1 million. So really the additional $207,000 related to the pay program is covered by recurring revenue. It's just that we use more excess working capital to go towards the one-time expenses. So when you saw that slide on the usage, that's why that number went up due to that.
Got it. Thank you, Wesley.
Okay. On the environmental services, this is just to highlight that the biggest thing that's included in this budget is, of course, the new garbage trucks. And, of course, the fact that this fund and Daryl and Christy are helping fund new ambulances. What? It's not Daryl's anymore? All right. But that delta of almost $3 million is because of those expenditures in fleet. And so again, this is just another slide that just shows that our minimum reserve for this fund is $6.5 million, and we're estimating to end at 8.5. And so again, that's intentional cushion being left there. On the health plan front, this is a really great story. I know we've talked about it quite a bit, but that red line showcases basically our fund balance in our health fund, which has rebounded pretty significantly since 6 years ago. And so we are in a really good position to be able to be more proactive with any changes in the market. And so we know that that's a conversation that we need to continue to have. But we're in a really good spot. We are not recommending any changes to medical plans, to premiums for employees next year. All of that is staying the same. And as a matter of fact, we just reported to the Compensation and Benefits Committee yesterday that we are actually making an enhancement to our dental offering. And so we're not changing the premiums, so premiums will stay the same on the dental side. But we did go through an RFP, and we will be recommending changing to a different dental provider that will add greater value to our employees. And so we're excited about that, as that is an enhancement to benefits. On the hotel tax side, there's nothing changed in this compared to what we showed on August 5th, but just as a refresher, this budget is roughly $3 million, which reflects an increase of roughly $1 million, mainly due to a transfer to go assist with the community center project. In addition, we've added some funds for Tejas Fest, which of course is coming up, and so I hope you plan to attend. And we're also accounting for that $130,000 that, of course, goes towards our partner agencies. And you'll be hearing more about that actually next week. This is the same slide we showed in August, basically to showcase that we are changing and being a little bit more aggressive with our estimated revenue on the hotel side. And so you notice where that blue arrow is at the bottom, that we are actually estimating an increase in our hotel tax revenue. And again, all in all, it's a $255 million budget on the expense side and a $243 million revenue budget. I think it's important to also remind you that there are some things that are very critical to our financial position that we need to continue to work on. And so at our council workshop at the end of this month, we will provide you an update on the stormwater utility implementation that we believe is very critical, just long-term, to not only improve the services we offer for drainage, but also to help create cash flow in both the general fund and the utility fund. And so we'll provide you an update with our consultant later this month. In addition, we know that we're going through a water study that we are intentionally actually going to delay the presentation of, because we don't want to confuse council as we talk about the stormwater utility or we talk about the rate study that I mentioned to earlier. We need to really prioritize that. That water study, the water feasibility study that I'm referring to, is the one that's assessing and evaluating what are our options for water sources, not to be confused with the water rate study. The water rate study is an exercise that we haven't gone through in 7 years. That's just looking at our rates. In order to successfully go through a water rate study, we need to develop a list of CIP projects. We need to develop what that recommendation is for personnel in order for the consultant to capture all of that. And so we don't want to confuse the water feasibility study with the water rate study. And so we are intentionally going to delay the water feasibility study results a little bit to just have us prioritize on the stormwater utility and the water rate study conversation. We, of course, with the completion of the public safety headquarters building and the move of police department and municipal court over to that facility, of course, we'll leave the building that we're in now vacant. And so we continue to look at the remodel for that so that we can move some departments from 700 Main back over here to this main campus, if you will. In November, we, of course, have that fire civil service collective bargaining election on the ballot. Allison and I have been working with an outside legal counsel that we are currently working on scheduling to come before you to provide you an update on what does it mean to be civil service? What are the implications of having collective bargaining? I think it's important that at minimum, everybody be educated on what the implications of that are, so that then you can make a decision for yourself as well as the public, right, on whether people think that's a great idea or not. More than likely, that'll have to take, not have to, but more than likely that'll take place at a special council meeting. Because we just have a lot of things that we need to talk to you about at the quarterly workshop next month. We know that the first meeting in October, we want to keep short intentionally because of National Night Out. And so we soon begin to run out of council meetings where we can allocate roughly an hour on the conversation of the civil service election. And so more than likely, that'll be a special council meeting in October. Of course, we'll continue to work with the compensation committee. We already had some discussions with them yesterday on sort of what is that next thing that we want to focus on, which centers around PTO. Of course, the library roof replacement conversation, I have an update for you on that in executive session. I have no idea why this came out blue. But one of the things that you're also going to receive an update on at the council workshop later this month is the latest on our landfill contract and that RFP process. Our current landfill contract ends at the end of 2027, and so we're already beginning to develop that RFP, and so you'll receive an update on that. There's also a solid waste rate study here that we don't want to forget about. The actual solid waste rates have not been increased in decades, and so it also necessitates a conversation around that. So there's a lot, basically in a nutshell, there's a lot of work left to be done through the studies, through the assessments, that could really play a pivotal role in the financial position that the city finds itself in the next 5 years. And so it's gonna be a busy year, but it's an opportunity for us to just change the course of our organization and our community through those exercises. And so I look forward to that. And of course, the timeline, I don't know why it turned blue, James. But of course, the outline, the calendar has us having all those final votes tonight. And of course, what's left in the budget process is simply just to prepare for implementation on October 1st. And happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, any questions? No, we appreciate the update. Thank you very much. Did you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
I might have
yes.
missed it, so
It's okay.
apologies if I did. What's the total tax revenue this tax rate generates compared to last year? I think there was a slide, but I, 0.6.
Wesley can probably answer that off the top of his head.
Yeah, there's.
No pressure, Wesley.
370 overall. It's on that slide.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then we are at item E1. That is an ordinance approving and adopting a budget as proposed as amended, which is the 255, 286, 194. So are there any motions with respect to that item?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget with the amendment recommended by staff.
Okay,
Second it.
all right, I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And E1 passes. So item E2.
Item E2 is a resolution ratifying the property tax.
Is there a presentation? No?
No, sir.
Okay.
I move we adopt E2.
Second.
Got a motion and a second.
He doesn't have to read it a certain way for that one?
Not for the property tax.
Got it.
No,
Do we have to do this one?
No,
no.
no, that's.
This is to
that's for
ratify the
E3.
property tax.
Okay.
All right, so I've got a motion and a second to ratify the property tax. Is there any discussion on that item? This is a hoop we have to jump through some of the new legislation. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on then to item E3.
Item E3 is an ordinance setting the tax rate for the 2025 tax year at a total of .4790 per $100 of property valuation. And this item is on second and third reading.
All right, do I have any motions with respect to item E3 to adopt the tax rate at .4790?
I move that that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.4790, which is effectively a 1.7% increase in the tax rate.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Appeared to be unanimous. Thank you. I will say, this has been a rather different type of budget year and tax rate setting year than we've had in the past with the, coming in with the reduction to our values, yes. And so I think this probably represents, the process that was difficult for staff in terms of navigating all of our kind of different questions and wishes and wants. And I think at the end of the day, this was probably not what any of us up here necessarily thought we were going to be had going into it. But I think we've done a good job, and I appreciate everybody's work and attentiveness on this to identify a budget that will continue to do what we need to do and identify a tax rate that supports that budget. So thank you, everyone. And I know that this didn't just fall out of the sky, that there was a lot of work put into it. And Mr. Garza, Wesley, Gilbert, thank you all and y'all staff for the time you put into it as well. Much appreciated. I know we threw some curveballs at you and you made some changes and revisions, and we appreciate that. So
Thank you.
Well, I'll echo that. This was much different than in years past, making sausage, but I think it will work for our community, and appreciate all the discussion that we had up here, the thoughtful discussion, and appreciate staff's involvement and work in this budget for this upcoming year. Thank you.
very good. Well, then let's move on and we will consider item E4.
Excuse me. Item E4 is a resolution considering an appeal of the Building Standards Commission's order to demolish the structure at 2606 Port Lavaca Drive.
Okay,
Ms. Fulgrim, welcome.
different kind of agenda item. Good evening, council. So if you remember, back at the August 5th meeting, you heard an appeal from the Building Standards Commission demolition order for the property at 2606 Port Lavaca Drive. And you see a picture of what the property looked like back on August 4th. Council, of course, chose to table the item to give the property owner time to make the necessary repairs. And I'm happy to show y'all a picture of what the property currently looks like. So the roof has been repaired. The glass, of course, has all been replaced and repaired. And then there's been substantial clean out and repairs on the inside as well. New tile ceiling grid, and then, of course, a lot of the old equipment has been removed. So I can happily report that it is no longer a substandard building, and staff does recommend that council overturn the order.
That looks fantastic.
Yes, thank you for the update. No, that's a big difference, absolutely. All right, with that then, are there any motions with respect to item E4? And just to be clear, I know we always do this, and Ms. Lacy is laughing at me as we speak. So what's before the council is to consider the appeal, and so our motion would be either to uphold the appeal to demolish or to overturn the decision to demolish. Is that correct?
Yes, except it is to uphold the order to demolish or overturn the order to demolish.
The order to demolish. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So a yay is to demolish.
So do we make a motion to overturn?
Yes,
I
that's
make
what
a
we're.
motion to overturn.
I second it.
Thank you.
There we go. So we've got a motion to overturn the order to demolish, and we've got a second. Is there any discussion on this item? Did you want to present anything?
I was just going to say a few words after y'all.
Yeah, please, come on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My father and I just want to thank you guys for giving us some time, and hopefully you guys are not surprised but happy with what you guys see on this picture. I have a few more pictures, but I sent them kind of late, but I think that picture will kind of suffice with what we've done with it. And we look to doing more business in Victoria and paying taxes to y'all.
Fantastic. Well, it looks great, and we appreciate y'all's investment in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, then with that, I think we need to vote. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. The order to demolish is overturned. All right. I think we will have a short executive session.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so at 6:05, let's take a 10-minute break. And then we will be back in executive session after that.
The city council will recess for executive session on the 9th day of September 2025 at 6:05 PM. Subject matter is as follows: Texas Government Code 551.087, 551.072, and 551.071.